Okay, great. So I always like to just start the session, and we are going to get started now, definitively. Just if everybody joining us can share in the chat box where they are joining from, specifically what state, and if you're abroad, what country and city that you're joining us from. I always love that exercise because number one, it is specifically shows just what a diverse perspective learning community we have that ultimately leads to a very diverse learning community. And it's also my shameless audio check. So if everybody can just go ahead and share in the chat specifically where they're joining us from, that would be phenomenal. And forgive me, I just noticed that not everybody could type in the chat, but I believe everybody can now. So my apologies. From the United Arab Emirates, welcome. And feel free to share. Netherlands, welcome. Sorry, guys, about the chat. My apologies. Welcome from the Netherlands. NYC, welcome, welcome. Colorado, we have so many alumni in Colorado. I just want to note that. That's a very popular state for our students. San Francisco, fantastic. Oh, Grace, so good that you were able to join. I'm so glad. Jersey City, Somerville, awesome. Brenda, I used to live in Medford, Massachusetts, right next to Somerville. My apologies, everybody, about the chat. So feel free to just type in the Q&A. And welcome from India. San Francisco. Rohan, we were just there last week for a big fair, graduate fair. So we love San Francisco and Californians. It's the most represented state outside of New York. So we love our Californians as well. All right, excellent. Well, I just want to say a huge thank you, everybody, for joining us. My apologies again for that brief interruption. Joining me today is Johan Lopez. Johan graduated from the MA in Climate and Society in 2023, and I'm going to be giving a formal introduction for Johan shortly. Also joining me today is Vishal Manvi. Vishal is a current student in the MA in Climate and Society program and is going to be working closely with our admissions office this year, which I'm so thankful for. And Vishal or Vishi is going to be assisting with Q&A toward the end of the session. In terms of just kind of going over the agenda briefly, the spirit of this session is going to be covering Columbia Climate School, who we are, our history. We're also going to discuss the student profiles of our learning community. We're going to perform also a deep dive into the curriculum of the MA Climate and Society, this interdisciplinary one-year program. And then we are also going to touch on the summer internship or capstone, professional development opportunities, financial aid, and finally, the section that I find the most riveting, because I work in it, is the application process. But before we dive into all the program content, Johan graciously agreed to join our session today and share his perspective as a recent graduate. I want to give him a formal introduction. So Johan Lopez is a first-generation immigrant, having grown up in the country of Colombia and the US. He graduated from Georgetown University and brings several years of experience both in the private and public sectors in various climate-related initiatives, including ESG investing and sustainable finance. Johan is passionate about diverse perspectives and lived experiences, and recently joined Morgan Stanley's Global Sustainability Office as a Director of Partnerships and Capacity Building within the Institute for Sustainable Investing. Prior to this, Johan served as a network regional coordinator for Latin America and the Caribbean at the United Nations Environment Program. So I want to just say huge thank you to Johan. Johan, if you don't mind sharing with me, obviously we have some of your background, but I'd love to hear a little bit more kind of about your climate story and how you became interested in this incredibly important topic.
Thank you, Alfred. Thank you, Vishai, for hosting me, and welcome everyone. It's very exciting to see so many cities and countries that are here in the chat. Well, thank you everyone for being here. So, Johan Lopez, I grew up in Colombia, as Alfred mentioned, and I came for my last year of high school and college to the US. And somehow I ended up working in climate because I was looking for jobs, and then I got this job as a project assistant back in 2014. I didn't really know what climate change meant, especially from the banking perspective. But I joined this team at the Inter-American Development Bank in Washington, D.C. And all of a sudden I understood that that was my purpose. I always wanted to do, I went for liberal arts and political science. And also I minor in social work. So I always knew I wanted to have a job with an impact, but at the same time, I was trying to figure out where that intersection was. And when I started working in climate change and understanding the importance of finance and climate and these two coming together is where I start seeing that I could have a career on this. So I was there for 5 years, almost 6 years in my first job. And I was very lucky that I have a very, good group of mentors and people that help me nourish that perspective. But that's when I started looking at how can I start working in something that has an impact, but at the same time, I feel like I'm putting other skills to work. And then after that, uh, um, um, I went into the private sector. I went to Citibank, where I was working in pure banking, and it was not sustainability related. And that's what I realized. That was my big aha moment when I saw, oh, okay, I really want to do this because I miss it so much. And that's when I also started looking for grad school programs and how can I continue further developing those expertise. But that's my initial start on my climate story.
Excellent. I appreciate it, Johan. And I will be going asking Johan to reflect on some additional experiences throughout the presentation. So that's not the last you're going to hear from Johan, and Johan's also here to answer any specific questions as well that you might have relating to kind of his experiences in the program and his career trajectory, of course. In terms of Columbia Climate School. Columbia University, of course, let's go back a little bit and describe it initially. Columbia University is the oldest institution or university in the state of New York. It is the fifth oldest university in the country. And when you say Columbia University, you're referring to an institution that is, you can think of it as an umbrella, and there are over 20 different schools within that institution, the majority of them being professional graduate schools. So you can think of Columbia Business School, Columbia Law School, Columbia Medical School, the School of Social Work, the School of Journalism, School of International and Public Affairs, the list goes on. And the newest school within Columbia University, which was announced in 2020 and officially launched in 2021, is Columbia Climate School. And so Columbia Climate School was established. It's a global leader in climate and sustainability education at both the undergraduate and graduate levels. Education programs at the Climate School provide an interdisciplinary knowledge base for future climate leaders to work with business, communities, governments, and civil societies to address the climate crisis. It is by all means an interdisciplinary subject matter. In order to address the climate crisis, we need multiple angles, multiple industries, multiple sectors to really tackle this. So in terms of, though, what I always like to stress is that when I speak about Columbia Climate School, many students would think, okay, this is a brand new school, it's a brand new footprint. And that simply is not the case. Within Columbia University, we were built upon decades of work in environmental and earth sciences and sustainability, first through Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory and then the Earth Institute. So what I like to just start off with is Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory. It's a 180 plus acre campus. It's about a 45-minute drive north of Morningside Heights. It's pictured there on the far left, right on the Hudson River. And many of our research centers are embedded within Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory. Many of our faculty are faculty researchers at Lamont. And Lamont has been kind of the tip of the spear, so to speak, in environmental science research. In fact, I always like to note that Lamont is ranked specifically the #1 research center in the country relating to the earth and environmental sciences. And just to give some additional nuance, one of our faculty in the 1970s was the first person to coin the term global warming in an academic paper. And the International Research Institute for Climate and Society, one of the major research hubs that's headquartered at Lamont, specifically developed the first model to accurately predict extreme weather events associated with El Nino. So there's a great deal of work that goes on at Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory, and that falls within Columbia Climate School's fabric. In addition, in the 1990s, the Earth Institute was established. This is the largest research center within Columbia University, and the Earth Institute has that was devoted to sustainability, and it really served as a hub for all of our schools and all of our programs across Columbia University to embed sustainability within their curriculum. Over 750 environmental scientists, policy managers, lawyers, and engineers are devoted to the Earth Institute, working on issues of sustainable development and environmental management. So from Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory and the Earth Institute, Columbia Climate School was established. Now I want to just transition to specifically the MA in Climate and Society program. Some additional history and context with this program is that it was interestingly started in 2005. It graduated its first class specifically in 2006, and we have over 600 alumni that fall within the MA Climate and Society program, but it was initially within the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. And the spirit of this interdisciplinary program is to train students to understand and address the impacts of climate variability of change on society and the environment. We want you to be able to understand this climate crisis from a scientific perspective, analyze it, understand its community impacts and its impact on society, and then implement climate information and change to both mitigate and adapt to the crisis. It takes very much an interdisciplinary approach to addressing climate change. And many of our students that enter this program are students that find an area of interest already, meaning they already know what they're hoping to focus in while in the degree. And then some of our students are far, far more exploratory in their approach to the climate crisis and specifically their elective journey. And I'm going to pivot to Johan also to share a little bit more shortly about how he specifically approached the electives. In terms of our cohort that just entered this fall 2023, specifically Vichy's cohort, about 40% of our students are international. We have 23 countries of citizenship represented. Among our domestic US students, 18 states are represented. Something that we're also extremely proud of is approximately 15% of our incoming class this year self-identify as the first in their family to attend college. We call that first-generation college students. And then the average age within the cohort is 26 years old. I also want to just briefly pause and touch on the lower right corner, the educational backgrounds. You can see that approximately 70% of the students enrolled in our degree program this year are coming to the program specifically with backgrounds in the social sciences. We have been seeing that trend consistently occurring year over year. So a growing interest in students from the social sciences. Maybe you studied anthropology, maybe you studied economics or sociology, and you're interested in the climate space. And then we have just under a third of our students coming from engineering and the classic STEM, natural and earth science backgrounds. Some students get intimidated when they see our curriculum, thinking, listen, I did not focus on the sciences. Is this program the right fit for me? And I want to note that this program really is for all students in all disciplines. I really want to lean into that today and make sure everybody understands that. And I'll make sure to deep dive in that in the curriculum on the next slide. So the Climate and Society program is for full-time students going to be a 3-semester, 1-year interdisciplinary program. And so in the fall semester, it always begins in the fall, this 34-credit journey, you begin with dynamics of climate variability and change. The dynamics course is really the science behind the climate crisis globally. It's going to heavily utilize physics. And sometimes I'm meeting with prospective students and they say, listen, Alfred, I believe in climate change. Do I really need to deep dive into the science behind it? And my response is that in order to communicate the crisis, you have to understand the science, because the only reason why we know climate change is occurring is first and foremost from science. So we need all of our students, regardless of your discipline, in order to have a foundation knowledge, in order to have this climate core that we so firmly believe in, you have to understand the science behind the climate crisis. Then we have two courses specifically. We believe the two pillars of addressing climate crisis, of course, climate change mitigation, taught by Dr. Melissa Lott, who is the director of the Center for Global Energy Policy in the School of International and Public Affairs. And then we also have climate change adaptation, taught by Dr. Lisa Dale. In the spring semester, we move into a course called Quantitative Methods for Climate Applications. This course specifically utilizes the computer programming language R to analyze climate data sets, tell a story with them, help synthesize the data for decision makers. And then finally, we have an Applications in Climate and Society, which is largely a seminar style class where we bring in guest speakers who work in the climate space. The final semester is going to be either a summer internship or a capstone. I always like to note the summer semester is the transforming concepts into practice. It's the idea that you're taking everything that you learned within the climate core and applying them to an internship or a capstone consulting project. And then, of course, we have electives, which I'm going to be discussing shortly. But before I move on to that, Johan's background was not in the classic STEM degree by any means. And I'd love to hear Johan and I will say this, Johan also, the program evolved slightly this year, where in fact, Johan took dynamics and quantitative in the same semester, which was especially aggressive. But Johan, I'd love to hear a little bit how you approached the science courses, what resources you used. Just love to hear your perspective on the core in general.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, of course, I was one of those students who were intimidated and were really second guessing my decision when I applied, when I was like, am I going to be able to go back to physics after 12 plus years of not seeing this since high school? But I think that coming from a different background in the social sciences, you have additional skills that will help you also navigate this program, and that means like connecting with people. I think that that's the most powerful thing that I had in my cohort, is that we partner with people that had an easy way around numbers, and we will like work together. There were a lot of group projects, so that also helped me to refresh my memory. But also I think that I mean, the very number of resources that you have through the program, through the school, with TAs, office hours. And I think that at the end of the day, if I always tell people that come to me asking me about the program, is that if I was able to do this, anyone can do it, because I was not a numbers person, but I always wanted to understand the science behind it. And that's why I chose this program. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here, but I also like trying to see, like, I'm trying to put like, this was part of the conversation that I needed to have with myself when I was trying to get into climate, because it's not only about policy, but it's also understanding data and how you plug that data into different scenarios that you're viewing here. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think that in a nutshell, to summarize, is very unlimited resources that you have with TAs. Professors are very understanding, and you can always go back to lessons and kind of like refresh your memory with TAs, and then also partner with other students. And then you have a prep session before you start. So that also was very helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Johan. That's brilliant. I forgot to mention there is a math boot camp that happens in the summer prior to your matriculation. It's free for our admitted students to be able to get up to speed on physics and statistics. So that's a great example. And then the other element I want to note is we do absolutely have teaching assistants for our classically challenging science courses in the program. So that's something else just to emphasize as well. Something else I want to just touch on, and I think Johan would have been fascinated by this, particularly because the way Johan approached the program, which I think was incredible, having started a position while in the program. But in terms of our this year, we have launched a part-time option for students whereby they could join the program part-time, and it would be essentially over a 2-year period. So rather than this 1-year timeline that I provided, you would join the program in a 2-year timeline. Um, but it's for very specific profiles of students. So it's not open, you don't automatically get accepted to be a part-time student. It's embedded within the admissions process. There is a question relating to whether or not you wish to be a part-time student. And if so, you have to provide an explanation, a brief explanation, but an explanation nonetheless of why you are seeking part-time. So part-time students generally include one or more of the following profiles: people with demonstrated significant work experience in a climate or climate adjacent space, working professionals currently in a space that can reasonably assert that they can readily apply the MA Climate and Society program to their current work, or to easily transition to climate or a related field where they can apply the program to that profession. So for example, a profile that would not be compelling for part-time enrollment, let's say you graduated from University of Florida this year, and you want to move to New York and start job hunting. And you don't have any full-time professional work experience, but you want to devote time to full-time job hunting and be in this program part-time. That would not be a compelling reason. However, let's say if you you graduated from school 5 years ago, you've been working part-time at let's say Prudential Financial, and you're looking to join their maybe their sustainability unit and apply what you're working to that pivot, then that could be a potentially good fit. So this is a part-time option. Something else I want to note is that this is not an evening only program. So there is a possibility, not a possibility, there will be time where you do have to enroll full-time, not full-time, forgive me, during the day. There's day courses as well. So I just want to note that if you are thinking about part-time, this is not an evening only degree program, even for part-time students. You might have to take in the middle of your day lunch breaks to attend a course. I want to also just briefly touch on now the elective journey, and then I promise I want everybody to hear from Johan and how Johan approached the electives, because it is so flexible in terms of your approach. And I also want to hear Johan's authentic experiences with cross-registration too. So this slide right here, this is to indicate just the number of climate school courses that we've started launching as electives within Columbia Climate School. So as a new school, we year over year continue to build upon additional electives, not only for our own students, but for students outside of the climate school to cross-register. So those include, for example, strategic communications for climate change decision-making, environmental justice, a legal framework for advocacy. In fact, we've added another environmental justice course. The final course listed right there, Imagining Climate Resilience and Justice, Ridge to Reef, Columbia, that's Columbia, of course, the country, was a travel program in the spring semester that we partnered with the Graduate School of Architecture, Planning, and Preservation. Students visited Columbia specifically to with kind of an urban planning lens, as they were looking at sustainability and resilience within the region. Out of curiosity, Johan, did you go on that trip or no? Did you, forgive me?
No, I was working, so.
Okay, yeah, got it. Yes. So yeah, it was a popular trip. Just also highlighting the fact that that coursework particular was a great example of cross collaboration within the climate school and the Graduate School of Architecture, Planning, and Preservation. I also want to just touch on electives. So in terms of, in addition to climate school electives, the program historically has always offered cross-registration electives. So I think what's really dynamic and exciting about the MA Climate and Society is the fact that you can take electives across the university and count them as electives towards the MA Climate and Society degree program. So we have students that take courses at the Mailman School of Public Health, at the School of International and Public Affairs. We have 2 very close partnership programs in sustainability management and sustainability science that we work very closely with They're embedded within the School of Professional Studies, and we have students that cross-register there. The Columbia School of Engineering and Applied Sciences, Columbia Law School, School of Architecture, Planning, and Preservation. So, we recognize that climate is interdisciplinary, and there are many subjects and professions that touch climate. And what better way to kind of build upon your elective journey by being allowed to cross-register within all of these really fascinating professional schools. Now, I do want to note that some schools are more cross-registration friendly than others. So a great example would be Columbia School of International and Public Affairs. They have a listing of courses they allow cross-registration, and they have a listing of courses they do not allow cross-registration. So I'd love to just now pause and Johan, hear your experiences in terms of your electives. How did you approach the electives? Where did you cross-register? What was your decision making? And even feel free to share any pain points that you might have experienced.
No, thank you. I mean, I think that this is part of the a big attributes of the program that you have is that you can somehow create your own curriculum at some point and say, okay, I'm more interested in this specific subset of topics within climate, and I want to continue specializing myself on that. I really want to work with this professor, and that's what I was going through. I knew I wanted to continue in sustainable finance, so I wanted to take classes that reflect on that. And I took classes at SIPA, the School of International Public Affairs. I also took classes with the professional studies, and I audited one class with the law school. And I think that my approach to this was more in terms of like what classes make sense to me in terms of professional development. So I took banking for development at SIPA. I took ESG reporting. I took corporate responsibility, and so on. I took like 5 or 6 electives. And the approach is that you have to be really insistent and try to organize your schedule. The pain points that I might have was that cross registration opens in different dates, so you have to really keep track on when this class opens for cross registration for different schools. But even if I actually got into 2 classes that I didn't get initially approved, but I went and talked to the professors, and if they have room, they will make sure to accommodate you. It's not an official statement that I will give to everyone, because it's not guaranteed that you're gonna get in. But I think that if you go around, talk to professors, email them and say how interested you're in this class for ABC reason, they will like make sure that they can help you as much as they can. So I think that my approach was also trying to make sense of what classes make sense with my work schedule, because I was working full time with flexible hours, but at the same time I wanted to take classes also from 6 p.m. to 8, and it happened to be that a lot of classes at the professional studies school and SIPA as International and Public Affairs also start at 6, so that was like also perfect matching for my schedule.
Excellent. I appreciate that. Thanks for that perspective, Johan, as well. Um, in terms of another nuance, and this is a new addition, in fact, in Vichy's cohort, is we got feedback, and we always love feedback from current students about their experience in the program, how we can improve the program. And some students wanted an option of a more curated elective journey, if you will. So what the program introduced and launched this year was called Areas of Specialization. And these areas of specialization include disaster risk management, which of course is a big tenet within climate adaptation. And then of course, climate and the built environment. Disaster risk management is in partnership with the National Center for Disaster Preparedness, and climate and the built environment is in partnership with our a close professional school, the Graduate School of Architecture, Planning, and Preservation here at Columbia University. I want to note that specializations are completely optional. We have a section in our admissions application where we inquire if you're interested in a specialization and which one, if that is the case. However, I want to stress that you do not have to announce a specialization if either of these topics are not necessarily areas of focus for you. Again, we want to stress that climate is a very interdisciplinary and broad subject area that touches a lot of different sectors and industries. So if you don't feel like these specializations meet your needs necessarily, there's no need to select one. But if you do find it of interest, that's phenomenal. And essentially we provide you a curated list of classes with guaranteed seats in those classes for disaster risk management and climate in the built environment. So of your 12 credit hour requirement, you would be completing 9 of those credits in one of those subjects. I do want to also note that the specialization does not appear on your diploma. So that's a question that frequently students want to better understand. It will not appear on your diploma, no, nor will it appear on your Columbia University transcript. The specialization essentially is just ensuring that you have seats in those given subject areas. So that's the one other nuance. And if you have any questions about specializations, feel free to type them in the Q&A as well. So I'm now going to transition to your final semester. This is the idea of transforming concepts into practice. And this is the first option is going to be the summer internship. In fact, the summer internship was historically always the option for students to select when they were in the program. And then in recent years, we also offered a capstone option. Interestingly, we've had students that have pursued both an internship as well as a capstone, which is fascinating. And actually, one other thing I want to note, which I think students are always intrigued by, at Columbia Climate School, the MA Climate and Society program is a flat tuition rate, meaning the schedule that I posted earlier relating to 34 credits and maybe 15 credits in your first semester and 6 credits in your final semester, etc. You could actually take up to 20 credit hours each semester and pay the same tuition, interestingly. And actually, Johan, did you exceed 34 credits in your program? How many credits did you take in total in the end? I'm just curious.
I took the requested credits, and then I took 12 credits in the summer.
Oh, wow, fascinating. So that's phenomenal. I'm gonna actually ask you about this summer. So just in terms of the internships, I want to note that we have a phenomenal director of career placement. Their name is Gerald Contiago. You begin working with the career placement director from day one in the fall semester. But I do want to note we do not guarantee you certain organizations. We guide you in your internship process, so to speak. So we help you in terms of your search. And these are just a few places where our students have worked. They include organizations like the United Nations and the World Bank, but also the New York Mayor's Office, Greenworks Lending, Center for Climate System Research, International Research Institute for Climate and Society. I highlighted them earlier relating to their work for El Nino. And then we have a capstone option. So during your summer semester, you could also complete a capstone. Students can choose to complete a 6 credit hour summer capstone workshop, and we've worked with a variety of organizations. Including the United Nations Foundation for Climate and the Environment. Working with their organization, they asked a group of students to specifically tackle climate proofing food systems in the global south, assessing investments in research and innovation for resilient smallholder agriculture. This summer, in fact, in Johan's cohort, another interesting capstone was WFLA TV and Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory. Full disclosure, WFLA TV is an NBC affiliate down in Tampa Bay area in Tampa, Florida, and that's where I'm from. So I was very excited to see that station participating, and it was to assess the Tampa Bay area's vulnerability compared to other cities along the West Coast and glean an explanation specifically for increased hurricanes and current climate conditions. In terms of, in addition to that final semester, which is that summer semester for you for internship or alternatively capstone, actually, I want to pause there. Johan, tell me about your summer. Now I'm very curious.
Well, I wanted to make the most out of my money and time at Columbia. So what I was making sure is that I was not taking I was not overloading myself at the beginning of the program, but then in the summertime, I was free, quote unquote, because I was really doing my internship slash working. So I took circular economy, I took sustainable finance, I took a class about forestry, and I audited all these classes, and they were like 4 credit classes each. So it was a lot because you have to compact that in over the summer, but it was also very good for me to feel that I was going beyond and learning more, because I mean, at the end of the day, I'm still looking at classes like, oh wow, that will having very interesting to take, and you cannot always take them all, but I think that the summer is a great opportunity for you to go around those classes that you have been thinking about and looking and go for it. And it was very easy for me to also manage that.
Excellent. I also want to note we have had some students with really interesting opportunities outside of the New York metro area for internships, for example. And so we have had students that have, for example, gone to Los Angeles or Berlin, Germany for their internship summer semester. So I also just want to note as an opportunity, you have to be in the New York metro area for the fall and spring semester. Um, for the classes. This is an on-campus learning community. But in the summer semester, let's say you only wanted to focus on the internship, some students are interested in opportunities outside of New York. That's possible if that's going to be your sole focus. So I just want to note that. Although I love how Johan really tackled the summer and took some additional coursework. That's phenomenal. So now I'll just go ahead and transition to discuss briefly resources and professional development that are dedicated to our students. We do have, as I mentioned, a dedicated director of career placement. We also host a variety of employer info sessions throughout the year. Something that the Earth Institute and now Columbia Climate School has hosted for over a decade is the All Ivy Environmental and Sustainable Development Career Fair. And I'm thrilled to announce this year we are returning to an on-campus career fair. There was some disruptions due to the pandemic the last few years, but this year it will very much be an on-campus career fair, which is phenomenal. We typically bring over 90 employers, and students from across the Ivy League come to participate in this career fair and different professional development seminars during the fair. We also have an exclusive job list and alumni directory. The Earth Institute also offers an internship program. And then finally, we also offer sustainability skills seminars throughout the year, typically around 10 of those. And most recently, we did a sustainability skills seminar in sustainable consulting. We're going to be doing one coming up on LEED certification. So we have a variety of career resources and professional development for our climate school students. This is just to give you an idea of the class of 2022. And again, Johan graduated from the class of 23, which just graduated. So we don't have all their career placement data yet. But for the class of 2022, and in fact, if I could ask Vichy, if you could be so kind to this was a website, the employer section. This is always helpful. If you don't mind pulling up the employer section, even typing it into the chat, that can be helpful for students. But in terms of the class of 2022, we've seen a significant increase in interest among the private sector for our students. Just to give you an example, it used to be around 15%, and now it was roughly 40% for the class of 22. And for the class of 23, we anticipate just as large of a ratio, if not higher. We've always had a significant number of students that go into the public sectors in the NGO space. And then finally, we also have students that enter academia and PhD programs as well. In terms of graduates, like recent graduates, we've had one of our graduates go into McKinsey working as a sustainability insight analyst, another student working for UNICEF as a geospatial risk analyst, Michigan State as a climate data science officer. And then we also have had a number of students go into the World Bank. In fact, I don't know if some of you might have joined my info session 2 months ago. Maya Korb works at the World Bank right now in food systems. We also have had students go into the city of Los Angeles. So again, a lot of public sector NGO space, but we're seeing an increase in the private sector. And just to give you some additional organizations where our students have gone on to and their specific job titles, here's a listing. So now I'm going to go ahead and touch on financial aid. There are specifically 2 buckets that I'm going to discuss. Number 1 are fellowships, and then the second is federal and private loans. So within the MA Climate and Society program, we have something called Climate and Society Fellowships. You are automatically considered for them at the time of admissions application. The average, just under 50 students in the fall of 2023 received a Climate and Society Fellowship. That was just under 50% of our class. And the fellowships ranged anywhere from $10,000 to upwards of $35,000 for a fellowship. We also have something called departmental research assistantships, and these are work opportunities for students. You would be provided $6,000 to work in the fall and spring semester. So it's not $6,000 each semester, but $6,000 in total for work in the fall and spring semester. Departmental research assistantships are advertised in July. So when you are an admitted student and you've committed to joining the program, you'll receive a listing of departmental research assistantships. You will apply for them in July, August, and you'll learn if you received one in September. That's just to give you an idea of those opportunities. I will say that we have roughly 30 departmental research assistantships, and um, probably around 70 students within the cohort applied for them. So we have more demand than we have supply. So we cannot guarantee departmental research assistantships, but it's another opportunity in terms of helping with funding. And then finally, we also offer external or we don't offer them, forgive me. We encourage students to review external fellowships. And in fact, the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences has an external fellowship directory. And I recommend everybody on the call at this stage, regardless of whether you're interested in fall 24 or fall 25, to really start researching external fellowship opportunities. I always hate to hear students get admitted to the program, and then, let's say in the month of March or April, they're asking about external fellowships. Those applications with outside organizations oftentimes have already passed. So I always recommend now is the time to start. Then we have federal and private loans, which I will say the majority of our students do use federal and private loans to help fund their degree. I will say the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences is still our hub for financial aid. So they are still the office that packages, so to speak, students. They do not determine the climate and society fellowships. That is determined by Columbia Climate School. But the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences is the hub for financial aid, especially as it relates to federal and private loans that you might be seeking. If you're a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, private loans are, federal loans are available to you, as is private loans, of course. And then if you're an international student joining the call, there are two organizations that Columbia University shares additional details about if you're interested. One is called Empower, and another is called Prodigy Finance. Those two organizations specifically do lend to international students. And they do not require a U.S. citizen or permanent resident as a co-signer. I will say, though, Prodigy Finance does not only has a select list of countries of citizenship with which they lend to. Empower is far more flexible, but I just want to highlight that for any international students on the call that was curious about potential private loans. Now I'm going to transition to the application process. I want to emphasize this 110%, that our admissions committee takes a holistic approach when reviewing candidates. This is not a formulaic process whatsoever. There is no minimum GPA. That's a question that we frequently get asked. Our admissions committee is deeply interested in your professional journey, your academic journey. What did you major in? What did you study? When did you study it? Your academic trajectory, your goals and motivations, which is largely where the statement of purpose becomes critical, your goals and motivations to specifically enter Columbia Climate School. And then, of course, what I want to emphasize is that there's no one element that outweighs others. All of these are carefully assessed and considered by our admissions committee. The one nuance I do want to note for any of the students joining us today where English was not the primary language of instruction in your undergraduate university, we will need an English test. So it's either going to be the TOEFL, the IELTS, or the Duolingo English test. So in the online admissions application, let's say that you shared that you attended a university where it might have been abroad, but its English was the sole language of instruction. So for example, let's say you said, Alfred, I attended American University of Beirut and I received a finance degree. Well, that's an institution where the language of instruction is English, so you don't need an English language test. But if you said, well, Alfred, I attended, a university in Argentina where the language of instruction was Spanish, and that's my native language, then we would need an English language test of TOEFL, IELTS, or Duolingo. One of those, not all three. In terms of the statement of purpose, which really is a critical element of your application, it's the opportunity for you to share your fit with the admissions committee, for the committee to really understand your goals and motivations, and how this program is going to help you address the climate crisis. The prompt is as follows. Please share the key experiences that have contributed to your commitment to work on climate change issues. In addition, what are your academic and professional goals, and what knowledge and skills are you hoping to develop through enrollment in Columbia Climate School? Finally, why is enrollment in Climate and Society critical in helping you achieve your goals, and which Climate and Society core course are you most excited to complete? That final one, and boy, that is a long prompt, so I apologize, but listen, we like to give a lot of instruction. That final question is important. Let the admissions committee understand which core course you're most excited. Maybe it's mitigation. Maybe it's adaptation. Perhaps you're really jazzed about understanding climate crisis and the scientific foundations behind it, which is the dynamics course. Perhaps really you're interested in the climate data course, but share with us which climate core course you're most looking forward to. Because remember, first and foremost, you should have an interest in the climate core. That's something really, really important. You should have a deep interest in that climate core. Finally, our application deadlines are as follows. The priority deadline is January 15th, 2024. Vichy, if I could ask also if you could copy and paste the application link or how to apply link, that would be amazing. I want to stress that all of you joining me today, whoever's interested in Fall 24, you should already have an admissions application open. Have your application open and start working on it now. Everybody on the call today should take advantage of January 15th, 2024. Decisions are released by March, and it's highly recommended for students interested in climate and society fellowships. So January 15th, 2024, take advantage of that deadline. And then finally, the final deadline, boy, I really had a fascinating morning today as I was trying to edit a slide, and guess what, guys? I'm going to do this live because it's really surely confusing, is March 1st, 2024. So the final deadline is March 1st, 2024. In terms of my contact information, please email me at admissions@climate.columbia.edu. And myself and Vichy monitor that inbox along with my colleague Damaris Diaz. And I really, really want to encourage you to now ask questions. We have questions for Q&A, and Johan's been very generous to agree to just stay for these next 10 minutes, although Vichy and I will stay longer if we need additional time for Q&A, but if you guys have any questions for Johan, time is limited, so I want to make sure any questions for Johan are addressed now. And I'm going to go ahead, and what I'm going to do is stop sharing the screen and just allow me now full screen. So my apologies, everybody. And I'm going to just go ahead and start looking at the Q&A. And actually, Vichy, is there any interesting questions that you might have seen?
Yes, there's one question on cross-registering with the teacher school. So that was the first question that came in.
Cross-registering with Teachers College is possible. We do have students that have cross-registered with Teachers College. I will say that it's that there's a couple more steps involved, but we have had students cross-register at Teachers College, if that's the question.
Yeah. The next question is it possible to share 3 letters of reference?
Unfortunately, no. It's 2 letters of recommendation. And actually, I should have dived a little deeper in recommendation letters. If you've been enrolled in a university for the last within the last 5 years, one of the recommendation letters must be academic. That's something very important to note. However, let's say you've been out of university, or let's say you've been in university and you want more than one academic recommendation, you can use 2 recommendation letters that are academic from a faculty member, for example. That's fine. But what you can't do is use 2 professional recommendation letters if you've been in university within the last 5 years. Now, let's say that it's been more than 5 years and you haven't, for example, in my undergrad experience, I went to the University of Central Florida. It's a huge state school. Keeping in touch with faculty members was certainly challenging, especially when you're in such large classrooms. If it's been being that it was more than 5 years for me when I was requesting recommendation letters, I used professional recommendations. So I'm just giving examples for myself. So in terms of those of you joining us that are seasoned students that have been out of school for more than 5 years, you are more than welcome to use strictly CHU professional recommendations. That's not frowned upon.
Yeah. Next question is for Johan. What motivated you to apply for this program? And what were some of the classes that you really enjoyed or stood out to you the most?
No, thank you. Well, when I was looking for grad school programs, I knew that I didn't want to do it through a GRE or GRA application, trying to do a standardized test. So this was something that really stood up to me about this program. But also, it was the easy way that I could build my own program somehow, and I kind of get the more electives. If you really look around, grad programs are not really that flexible in general, and this one was very flexible in terms of what classes can you take outside of the core classes. And also it was a 1-year program. I also financially and in terms of career, I didn't want to take time off for 2 years, regular master's program. And so 3 semesters, and I could actually complete it in 1 year period. And I think the classes, I mean, it was a mix of good classes that I had. I think that learning dynamics and learning the scientific and physics parts of climate was very interesting to me. I'm gonna be completely honest with you. It was a challenge in terms of trying to set back my mindset on okay, thinking in that regard, or trying to understand or refresh those numbers in my head. But at the end of the day, it was a huge a sense of complexion, and I was able to do it. And I think that other classes that are offering cross-registration are also very interesting. You get to work with top-notch professors. I had one professor who was the former VP of risk at a major multilateral bank. So it was also very good for me to have not only that academic but also professional experience in connecting with people that might be good for a recommendation later in the future, or that might be a good person to guide you on questions that you might have in your professional journey.
Yeah. The next question is, if you're interested in MS in sustainability management, should you apply to both schools, or can you create an interdisciplinary major by combining courses from both the schools?
Oh my gosh, that's such a good question. So in terms of the sustainability management program, which is a really close partner program with us, in fact, Johan shared that he did take some courses as electives within that program. They are not combined. There's not a dual degree between the climate and society and the sustainability management. Because the programs are embedded in different professional schools within Columbia University, you are able to apply to both programs at the same time, but ultimately you are only allowed to select one program to officially enter and matriculate to. So you will have to make a decision. But I do want to just note this, that we have an open house event. I don't know for any of you that are joining from the local tri-state area, or even perhaps I saw somebody's noted that they were in DC, somebody in Syracuse. I know that those are great distances, but our open house is going to be Friday, October 27th. Myself and Vichy will be there. We're going to have a current student panel. We're going to have a faculty panel, and it's an open house for all 4 of our partner programs: sustainability management, MPA in environmental science and policy, MS in sustainability science, and MA climate and society. So I think there's a lot to be benefited from, especially if you are in the local area or within driving distance or commuting distance. We do have students registered from abroad. Last year was our first open house. We had students from Chile and Ireland join. So people travel far and wide to come to this event. And I believe Vichy's gonna go ahead and plug in a link specifically for open house if any of you are or not already registered and interested in potentially coming to New York next Friday, October 27th. Another question that just came in, actually, let me pause there. Is there anything else though for Johan? Just because I want to be mindful of his time and making sure that any questions that might be specific to Johan.
Yeah, there's one question that is directed to Johan. How is the total workload of the program? Specifically, I think they are referring to the academic rigor. How intensive is it? If you could speak about that.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to start saying that it's a very demanding competitive program. You're dealing with really smart people that you're working with, and professors are, I mean, as I said early on, I mean, first category professors. So you have the privilege of working with the experts in climate, and that also requires that you put a lot of effort in how much, and maybe she is living through this at the moment, but I will say that everything is manageable. I mean, you have to set priorities. Of course, I wasn't partying every weekend or going out, and I was really focused on working on my degree, but it's manageable. I mean, you learn also new skills and soft skills as well, working in groups, managing deadlines, and also thinking what the big picture is. So I think that it's a good mix of flexibility in terms of like what classes can you take, but also at the same time accountability, because you have to keep a GPA, you have to keep up with different requirements and homework that you get. But at the same time, my recommendation to upcoming students is always do not overload yourself. The first semester, do what you have to do the required classes, and then you start seeing how do you feel about maybe taking an extra class or maybe going to an extra fellowship. I think that was great advice that I got from a former also CNS graduated, and it really worked out for me, because my first semester was more calm and trying to assess myself, and then my second and third semester was when I was being a little bit more aggressive in terms of what classes can I take and what programs can I participate on.
The
Excellent
next question
question. I mean,
specifically, sorry, go on.
Oh, no, I just wanted to say thank you so much, Johan. And I want to be mindful. Johan, I just wanted to say huge thank you. Johan agreed to 1 hour. So Vichy is going to stay on the call. Vichy is very much a current student in the learning community, so he can share his perspective. But for this moment, I just want to say huge thank you, Johan, for participating in this, sharing your experiences, and we can't thank you enough, and I'm sure the prospective students really appreciate you again lending your voice.
No, thank you for having me, and just for all those that are listening to us, do not second guess yourself in terms of like whether I can do this or not. You can go back to physics and STEM assignments, and you'll be fine. And I think, I mean, again, it's a great program. And if you think it's a fit for you, I will say just don't hesitate, do your application, get the letters and apply. It was really good for me. So thank you, Alfred, and thank you, Vichy, for putting this together. And always happy to chat with anyone who has any questions.
Thank you, Johan. Thank you so much. Take care.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And then, so just transitioning back to specifically the Q&A. And now, Vichy, I would love to hear you. One of the questions was relating to the typical projects. So Vichy's in his first semester. Vichy, do you want to share with us the courses that you're taking? Well, they would be familiar, but what kind of projects are you working on?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us from different parts of the world. We really appreciate this opportunity. So I'm taking 6 classes. So the first 3 are the core classes that Alfred already mentioned. One is the dynamics one. We have a problem set every week. So that means you're watching the videos before the class. These are around 45 minutes of videos, doing some short, very succinct quizzes. And then once you get to the class, you work on problem sets with the professors. There are like 5 TAs. So we keep discussing with TAs. We work in groups, ask questions about the conceptual framework for a lot of these problem sets. And then we submit it after 4 days. So that's the typical load for dynamics. And initially I thought it would be super intense because I came from a policy background. I've spent a lot of years as a journalist. So I did not, for the longest of time, have the physics and the science part of it. But we had a summer session where we had access to a lot of resources where we could prepare for basic math or advanced math, calculus, or even coding, like installing R and prepping up so that once you actually start the semester, you're not panicking. You can figure these out during the summer, do the basic exams as well. So the course load for dynamics is actually very manageable. You just need to make sure that you have very specific time slots allotted. When do you do the problem sets? When do you go for office hours? Because the TAs are very accessible. For example, I just reached out to one of the TAs yesterday because I had confusion about one of the questions, and we quickly hopped onto Zoom, discussed all the questions I had, and I was able to submit my problem set pretty easily. So the learning community is very welcoming. Even if you have questions, you can work with students, you can work with professors, you can work with the TAs. There's always some resource available for this class specifically. And now moving on to adaptation and mitigation, the core, like there are readings obviously because it's a grad level program. For example, adaptation every week has at least 60 to 80 pages of readings, and the professor is very mindful. Even before the classes started, the professor made sure to make it public that I will have so and so amount of readings, and there's a logic and reason for it because every week we are covering very specific element of adaptation, be it maladaptation, disaster risk reduction, or nature-based solutions. For example, that's what we studied yesterday. We have a discussion board and we have a final presentation for this. In terms of workload, this is one of the like easier classes, but then you have to be very thoughtful and mindful when you're contributing to discussion boards, even with presentations. The quality has to be top notch, and we've been given the rubric as well for this. So there's a lot of discussions happening between different groups because we also need to write a final paper after we do the presentation, comparing and contrasting most of the case studies that have been presented. The third class I have is mitigation. This is a bit more heavier on the writing or written side because we have 8 papers that we have to submit and then a final presentation. But it's also extremely educational because we are learning about degrowth. We are learning about carbon emissions or greenhouse gas emissions in different countries, comparing, contrasting, and we have a lot of keynote speakers and guest speakers who come to visit us during this class, giving us insights into, for example, Colombia's degrowth plans or even decarbonization plans, or how Costa Rica focused on its decarbonization despite political changes. The project has stayed consistent going forward. Besides this, I'm taking a class on ESG and ERM, which is more of a financial, like, metric analysis class, and I'm trying to use this to build myself more into sustainability. And I'm also taking a resilient cities class, which is with GSAP, which is a School of Architecture. This is one of the areas of specialization. Just want to spotlight this. And here I'm working with urban designers and urban planners. So we are looking at site visits, mapping them, and looking at a lot of maps. So that is something that will come in handy if you're trying to focus on this area of specialization. But if you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Vichy, for that. I really appreciate it. And several great questions are coming in. Really, I'll just go through some and answer live to be helpful. Do you accept the GRE score? Yes, absolutely. We still accept the GRE. So while it's not a requirement, we are still able to accept GRE scores. In the admissions application, you would share your unofficial score report with us. You're still also welcome to send the official score report. If admitted, you would then send us your official GRE score. With college transcripts, we need those of all your transcripts uploaded to the admissions application. So you won't send us the official transcripts electronically through Parchment or National Student Clearinghouse. Although if you wanted to, you're welcome to do so. But for admissions decisions, you would simply upload your unofficial transcripts for admissions committee review. And then if admitted, we would then request the final official transcripts as well.
There's one more question, IELTS requirement. If somebody's already done like their previous masters in English, this is an international student. Would you want to take that?
We still, if it needs to be a bachelor's degree in English. So we still need either a TOEFL, an IELTS, or a Duolingo English test. I saw another question relating to just being shy of one of our minimum scores, which is a 100 on the internet-based TOEFL. Unfortunately, I strongly recommend that you retake that TOEFL. We need a 100. It's one of our minimum standards at the university. As you can imagine, the rigor of our program, as Johan authentically noted, is quite significant, and all of our professors exclusively teach in English, so we need to see a strong English language foundation.
There's also a question on, are the economics and financing of climate change mitigation incorporated into the course? I can take this. There are some components of this in the mitigation syllabus, if you look at it. And we do talk a lot about ways to finance transitions, or just the core concepts of like global climate financing. How does it move between global north and global south? And the student affairs is like aware that we need a specific climate finance course, and there are opportunities to cross-register with SUMA and SEPA specifically if you're interested in pursuing courses that focus on financial modeling or looking at evaluation of climate finance and stuff. So there are opportunities to build and lean into Columbia classes that are being offered specifically. And there's a question on, do you accept 3-year bachelors as well? This is, I think, international students.
I was
think
talking and I'm like, I'm muted. There in our FAQ page, we do address 3-year bachelors. Columbia Climate School is now accepting applications from students earning 3-year bachelor's degrees in Australia, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Canada, India, Israel, Malaysia, Nepal, New Zealand, Pakistan, South Africa, and any country that participates in the Bologna process. And that is on our FAQ page if you wanted to click on the link for the Bologna process.
there's also a question, does the climate school offer fellowships for returned Peace Corps volunteers?
Yeah, that's a great question. We do not offer exclusive, the Climate and Society Fellowships merit-based, so that's certainly meritorious having participated in the Peace Corps. But we don't guarantee a fellowship based on that participation. But what we do have are application fee waivers for students. There's 2 paths for a fee waiver. One would be for financial hardship. So if you can prove financial hardship, there's a little section in the admissions application where you would indicate such and provide a document indicating such. And then the other would be through participation within specific organizations like the Peace Corps, like Teach for America. So, so having been a member of the Peace Corps would award you a application fee waiver, certainly.
Yeah. There's one question, is it possible to do 1 semester full-time and finish out the rest of the program part-time?
The only in unique circumstances would that be allowed. By and large, they really are seeking students that if you are coming into the program to be full-time, they want to see you complete the program full-time. But certainly, you know, life changes, elements in your journey have changed. Our program is allowed to be a part-time program. It's sanctioned by the university. But it would have to be a conversation with our academic affairs team while you're enrolled in the program to determine, does that make sense to be part-time?
Yeah. And there's also a question that, like, the theme that keeps cropping up often, that is this program designed for people with experience or for someone who's come from undergrad or a mix of both?
I'm so sorry. Say that again, Vishi. My apologies.
Is this program designed for people with work experience or people who just come from undergrad?
That's a great question. So, interestingly, both Johan and Vishi participating in the session today, both of them came to this programming having robust experience. In fact, Vishi, do you want to share a little bit about yourself?
So I worked as a journalist with French news agency AFP for over 5 years, and before that I worked with BBC India and a few other organizations. So I've spent like 6 to 7 years as a journalist in India, and also had some fellowships that took me to Paris, Serbia, and elsewhere. And after that, I moved to US in 2021, did 1 more master's, and focused on climate and society, specifically for the core courses, because that's such a relevant skill that I definitely needed in my toolkit. And yeah.
That's excellent. Yeah, so it just so happens Johan and Vishi both came to the programming having worked prior to working in public, private sector, one working in finance and with the UN, the other working in journalism. So the average age in Vishi's cohort, the fall 2023, is 26 years old, approximately 20% of the fall 2023 class, and there are 103 students that joined us in that class. About 20, or forgive me, I keep saying 20%. 20% had 5 or more years of professional work experience. However, I will say a significant number of students that joined the program went right from undergrad to grad, but our admissions committee strives to develop a very diverse learning community, both in their education disciplines and professionally. So it's a very diverse group of students with many different lived and professional experiences. Another question, I love the questions, guys. These are phenomenal questions, and I so appreciate them coming in. And thank you, Vishi, for staying on longer. Is the master's research intensive, and what are the assignments like in the course? I'm wondering, since there's no thesis or dissertation. Vishi, do you want to take that on?
Yeah, definitely. So again, the assignments are research intensive, but it depends on the classes specifically. For example, if you're working on mitigation papers, they're very research intensive. You have to look at data sets from International Energy Agency or like EIA, EPA, so multiple organizations. These sources are provided in the classes. And again, the research component comes into play if you're working as a departmental research assistant with any of the professors specifically. So it basically depends. Your dynamics is not research intensive because you're directly targeting scientific concepts, mathematical equations, and solving them. Mitigation is definitely research intensive, and it's also on you how you shape your final papers, because if you take elective courses with different schools within Columbia, they all have specific and very different requirements. For example, right now I'm working on a paper around watershed management in New York and drawing comparisons to different countries. So that is a bit more research intensive. It's open-ended. It depends on the pathways you take, but in terms of specifically courses, you could balance it between being research intensive and also focusing on short-term assignments, because we also have a lot of short-term assignments. On a weekly basis, we need to turn in the papers, we need to do the problem sets, do the discussion boards. So you will have to plan yourself really well in terms of weekly deliverables, monthly deliverables, and semester-wide deliverables. So I hope that answered your question.
That's great, Vishy. Thank you. One other question I want to address, Kevin asked it very early. When recruiting students, what recruiting support will be provided to help students find summer internship opportunities, or of the students that complete a summer internship, roughly how many of these are schools facilitated internships opposed to student independent sought internships? I will say this, we do not specifically have like a list of internships and then place you in each of these internships. The internships have always been this at the students' independent research. However, I want to say with Gerald and the work that they do for the cohort that begins again from day one, oftentimes research or internship opportunities that students ultimately end up pursuing was helped through the guidance of Gerald. And we are a program that's existed since 2006 or 2005, forgive me. We have a long list of organizations that have taken on our students for interns, and we have a number of organizations that year over year will end up offering internships to climate and society students. So while we do not place you, it is up to you to find it. We provide resources to help you in the guiding process.
Yeah. There's one more question. Are there any countries whose applicants are exempted from the English language testing?
Those would be countries where English is the language, the native language of instruction at those universities. So, for example, if you attended a university in the UK or Australia or New Zealand, for example, again, what's most important to us is the language of instruction in your university. It's not about citizenship. It's about your language, your native language.
Okay. There's one more question. If I took the TOEFL 4 years ago for my undergrad application, would I have to retake it again for the master's application?
Well, the question would be, Vrinda, what was the language of instruction of your university? That's the number one question. It sounds like if you took a TOEFL 4 years ago for undergrad, it sounds like you were required to take a TOEFL because it was an English language university. So if that's the case, then you wouldn't need to take the TOEFL again. If you ultimately attended a university where English was not the language of instruction, then we would need the TOEFL again because TOEFLs expire after 2 years. Great question.
Yeah. The next question is, I work for an English-speaking working environment in Mongolia. I took IELTS many years ago with a band of 7. Do I need to set up another date? I'm assuming the answer is yes.
Yes, if English was not the language of instruction for your university, and we understand that you work in an English language setting, but again, that's something that we aren't able to have flexibility around.
Yeah.
So
Sorry,
yeah.
go on.
No, Vishy, did you have one more that you wanted to read?
Yeah, so someone is asking if should we reach out to professors in the school? I mean, if they're interested in specializing their degrees in the direction of the expertise the professor has.
Yeah, Erica, that's a great question. A lot of students will email me saying, should I be reaching out to professors at this stage? Is that something that's of great importance? It's not a research-based thesis program. I understand when you're thinking about a PhD program, yes, you would want to try to make connections with professors to determine aligned research. That's not necessarily the case with our students. So I just want to note that, in terms of in terms of our applicants don't feel the need to connect with current faculty, although we have the information publicly. If you have questions, you're welcome to email them. But that's not necessarily a requirement to be competitive for this admissions application at all. And I wanted to note one other element. One thing I do recommend, though, with your recommenders, make sure to connect with them and make sure they understand your goals and motivations for the MA Climate and Society program, as in their voices are going to be crystal clear for our admissions committee to review. And then we're going to do one more question.
I think the
Go
summer
on.
internship, since the summer internship is worth 6 credit, does it mean it's unpaid, and do the students access internship or get it by themselves? I mean, I think this question's already answered. So
Yes, it was answered. And then now, if you could help me with this one, because I'm noticing the students asking, because I'm having a little trouble understanding of Vichy, and I don't know if you have a better sense. What critical theoretical perspectives are employed in the master's? Example, decolonial or degrowth?
Okay.
I'm
So this is, I mean, this depends specifically on the professor and also the course materials. We do have a lot of reading on degrowth, green industrialization, or also basically integrating like looking at adaptation practices from a decolonial perspective. So for example, when we are talking about nature-based solutions for a lot of projects, we look at the indigenous sources of knowledge. Where is it coming from? Is it being co-opted, or is it being co-adapted for co-benefits at a global scale? So there are a lot of perspectives, but since this is not a IR degree, we are not looking at critical power imbalances between different state or non-state actors. We are looking at it from the lens of climate or sustainability, and trying to the global goal of reducing temperatures, or trying to have growth that's much more green and also sustainable. So we do have some elements of these schools of thought in our readings, in like our classroom discussions. But since it's not a very research based program specifically, you wouldn't get to actually write a capstone or a thesis exploring these elements throughout the year. But again, it depends on you. If you're taking specifically those classes at SEPA or elsewhere, you could explore papers in specifically those directions.
And I think Vichy, I believe, was sharing several links with everybody. I just want to make sure. Did everybody get that link? I just want to make sure. I just copy and pasted those links back in. One relates to open house on October 27th. Another relates to how to apply. The link to how to apply. Another link was relating to our employer outcomes for the class of 2022 specifically. And then the final link I do want to highlight for everybody is specifically our student directory, which is a new innovation on the website. And I think it's very exciting for prospective students to take a look specifically at Vichy's class of fall 2022 and see where students are coming from, their education backgrounds, their interests within the climate space. Definitely check out One-on-One or check out our directory of students. I hope everybody's able to see that.
Yeah. And we also have a link where you can set up one-on-one appointments with Alfred. That's the last link. So please keep that handy and use it as much as you can to chat with Alfred.
Well, I want to say a huge thank you to everybody that joined the session today. Huge thank you to Vichy for staying on. And if there are any other questions, please use the links that we just shared. Email us at admissions@climate.columbia.edu. Start an admissions application for fall 2024 if that's your area of interest. The application is live, and we always recommend to take advantage of that. This is being recorded. We will be sharing a recording within the next 24 to 48 hours. And I want to say thank you, everybody, for dedicating time to learn more about our program, our mission. I'm certain all of you are looking to do or already doing critical work in the climate space. So thank you again for joining us from across the world, and have a wonderful day or evening. Take care.